passing parade. You know, we can go and watch the Christmas pageant. You know, there's the bands and the clowns and the floats, the whole bit, and they just move past. We don't get involved with it. We don't jump on a float or, you know, go and chase the clowns or whatever. It's the same with our thoughts. They're just a passing parade of thoughts. We don't have to get involved with it. We just be aware of it, let it go and let it go, and it will disappear. It's simply not getting involved with it. It's not attaching to it, getting attached to it. And so you may be just be having a, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, good days, bad days. You may be just be having a really high stress day, which makes you more alert, more sensitised. Yeah, that does ease up the process, and that's where I'm going to go right now. Because we have to work through the process of recovery. You know, you're not going to walk out of here, whoopie-doo, it's all over. It doesn't work like that. You're going to need to work it. You've got to work the process through. These are stress-related disorders unless they began through marijuana or cocaine or LSD or ecstasy or speed or whatever. But now for all of us, doesn't matter how it started, for all of us, the stress of our disorder, the stress of not understanding or lack of diagnosis or inappropriate treatment or non-effective treatment, that is just creating more and more and more stress. You know, when we have our first panic attack or our anxiety level goes through the roof, we've virtually met our threshold to stress. We simply can't take any more stress. And it's not that we're weak. Because people say, you know, I should be able to handle this, I should be able to do this. It's simply that we've met our threshold to stress, and trying to be everything to everybody, that places us under phenomenal stress, and one day something's got to give and our anxiety disorder will start. That means we've just reached the limit of our threshold to stress, and then the stress of our disorder chips away, chips away, chips away, and some people can end up where they have zero tolerance to stress. That car, just a minute ago, that can be enough to cause a startle response. And you go, oh, what was that? And it turns on the fight and flight response. Some people have no tolerance to stress at all anymore, and it doesn't mean that they are weak. We are extremely strong people, and I don't say that to motivate you or to make you feel good. I'm simply telling you the truth. The need to be all things to all people takes a phenomenal amount of strength. To live with an anxiety disorder day after day after day, that's a phenomenal amount of strength. You know, these people that have had it for 50 years because they've never been diagnosed. I mean, that's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of awesome strength, and we are strong people, but we don't believe it emotionally. And so when we do reach the point, if we do reach the point, we've got zero tolerance to stress, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that we're just too strong for our own good. That's what it's a sign of, and I really mean that. So some people have zero tolerance to stress and their anxiety level will be at 10. Recovery means bringing the anxiety level up to, the threshold to stress up to 10, and bringing the threshold to stress, it means bringing the threshold to stress back up to 10 and bringing their anxiety level from 10 down to 0. That's the recovery process. And usually people that have zero tolerance to stress, I mean, they know it because they just simply can't take anything at all. And you could be anywhere on that ladder from 0 through to 10. You know, you might be at level 4, it means you've got to build your threshold to stress back up to level 10, or you might be on level 7 and you've got to build it back up to 10 and bring your anxiety down. And that's the working through process. If we use the example of someone that's got zero tolerance to stress, they're usually housebound or very close to being housebound, and they can usually only do things with the support of somebody else, accompanied by somebody else. And so they start to meditate, they start to work with their thinking, and their threshold to stress starts to rise. And suddenly a window opens. And everything that I'm saying, everything the cognitive therapists are saying, you suddenly, the emotional and intellectual integration just click into place. And you see it so clearly. It's a total perception change of your experience. And there is so much freedom and so much clarity. But because that person's threshold to stress is so low, it's not going to take much to close the window again. And it could be anything, you know, a car backfiring, a dog barking, whatever it is. And that window closes and suddenly, bang, they lose the freedom, they lose the clarity, and they're back into the anxiety disorder way of thinking, feeling and believing. All that means is that they've had their first setback. And we encourage you to have as many setbacks as you possibly can. And I'm not being a sadist. The more setbacks you have, the more you've got to work with. The more you're going to understand yourself and the more you're going to understand your disorder. I worry about people that have no setbacks or one setback because I know what's going to happen. It's just going to roll on through again because they've not learnt about themselves and they have not learnt fully about their disorder. So when the window closes, they have their first setback. Okay, you've got to become aware. What was the stress? What was the stress that triggered the setback? And at the lower end of the scale, it's not going to take much. You know, car backfiring, dog barking, whatever. Okay, yeah, that startled me, that scared me, and then I brought back into my thinking. You know, oh, what if here it comes again, rah, 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 rah. So they keep working with meditation, keep working with their thinking, and their threshold to stress comes up a little bit more. Comes up to level 2. The window opens again, and again that emotional, intellectual integration takes place. And you know the truth of everything that I'm saying, everything your therapist is saying to you. You see it, feel it, taste it. And there's so much freedom, there's so much clarity, and it's an awesome experience. But because their threshold to stress is still so low, it's still on level 2, it doesn't take much to close the window again. And usually the window's only open for 3 to 4 hours the second time. And then it shuts again when a stress comes along that's too much for that person to tolerate, and they roll back into the anxiety disorder thinking. So again, second setback, and become aware, what was the stress that caused the window to close? Now the thing is with stress, it doesn't matter how bad the stress is. It's the way you are thinking about it and the way that you're working with it that creates the problem, not the stress itself. And because we are dealing with all the stress in our life from the good, nice person, what mask do we put on today? That's what's causing the problem. That's what's causing the damage. It's the way that we are seeing the stress and dealing with the stress. You know, I had in the very early days, we had a woman that lived in the hills. And for those of you that live in the hills, you know how difficult it's been at any time to come down the road, Mount Barker Road, before the freeway was put through. And a lot of people are trapped in the hills. They have not been able to get down onto the plains. And she worked very, very hard at her recovery. And she was driving down the old Mount Barker Road every day, and she was coming into town and she was shopping and she was doing everything she needed to do, going out with friends for lunch, the whole bit. And she was really, really going very well on her recovery. Her son came home. And he was a heroin addict. And she became she was not just his mother, she became his nurse, his social worker, his lawyer, his banker. She did everything for him. He refused to go into a methadone program. And so she just looked after him. And she got worse and worse and worse again. And she was almost housebound again. And he didn't have to do anything because she was doing everything for him. He just needed to get his heroin. And then she recognised that with her behaviour, she was enabling him to remain a heroin addict. He didn't have to do anything about it because she was doing everything for him. And she realised that by what she was doing for him, it was also making her worse because she was constantly just obsessing and thinking about it the whole time. And she said, look, I love you very much, and when you're prepared to do something about this, I will help you, but I can't help you anymore. I never ever heard what happened to him, but she made a full recovery because she dealt with it in a way that was responsible for her and not taking responsibility for her son, because that was his responsibility, not hers. And I use that as a dramatic example because this is what we do when we're working with stress. We do what we think, we take responsibility for everybody else in a stressful situation, and we're not taking responsibility for ourselves. And so the more setbacks you have, and the more you look at the stresses that are creating that setback, you see your own behaviour, and you're going to see how you're betraying your responsibility to yourself and how you're betraying your integrity to yourself. And that's how you bring the emotional development up, by working with the process. And you're only working with your panic and anxiety thoughts, you're working on, you're peeling the onion, and you're seeing the second and third layers of the violation of self, the invalidation of self, the betrayal of the responsibility to yourself, the betrayal of your integrity. And so then you do begin to become responsible for yourself. You begin to set boundaries. You begin to work with stress as it really is, not how it should be, must be, have to be, etc., etc., etc. Does that make sense? Has anyone got any questions? Does anyone want to ask me anything?
What's a full recovery then?
Full recovery is having an occasional attack when you're tired or whatever, and not buying into it. As I said, once I did get to about, I think I got to about 18 months, 18 months, 2 years, I can't remember now. But I usually average one attack every 10 months or 12 months, but who's counting? So, yeah. And that was, what's 30 seconds every 10 months, 12 months? Who cares? I'd rather have a 30-second attack and have my life back than be sitting home worrying about when my next one's going to be, which is only going to be 5 minutes away because I'm worrying about it. So it really does come down to choice, how you choose to live your life. Yeah. Has anyone else got any questions? No? I was very, very careful in the words I was using then. And I was talking about when the window opens and there's the freedom and there's the clarity. And then when the window closes again and we roll back into the anxiety disorder way of thinking and feeling. Because this is what happens. We actually begin to feel like there's two of us in our head. In those periods of you feeling that? Yep. And we're all going to go through the two of us inside our head stuff. It's very, very normal. And we all often think to ourselves, oh gosh, because we can feel two separate people inside us. There's the healthy us and then the anxiety us. So we get out the books. What's wrong with me? I haven't got anxiety disorder. I've got multiple personality disorder. No, you haven't. The experience of the two selves, the healthy you and the anxiety disorder you, is normal. We all go through it. And you'll feel the healthy you in those periods of freedom and clarity. And then you'll roll back into the anxiety disorder you. And at the moment, the anxiety disorder self has a lot more power because you're still frightened of your anxiety, etc. But the more you become responsible for yourself, the more you honour yourself, the stronger the real self, the healthy self, will develop and grow and ultimately integrate the anxiety disorder you, and it's all over. I was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs before. There's the need to belong level and then there's the self-esteem level. And recovery virtually means not just working with our panic and anxiety thinking. And now I'm quoting from the work of Ken Wilber, who's one of the leading theorists of consciousness in the world. Well, he is the leading theorist in consciousness in the world. And he talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and our development. When we're being responsible for ourselves, when we're beginning to meet our own self-esteem needs, and I'm saying this, when we're working with our anxiety disorder, we begin to disidentify with the need to belong, but because we have not fully identified yet with the self-esteem level, we're sort of stuck between the two levels, and that's what I call no man's land. Because we're learning to let go of the need to belong, but we're not fully belonging to ourselves yet. So you will have that experience of the two selves where you're identifying with the self-esteem level, then you're identifying back with the anxiety disorder level. And that does keep going back and forth, back and forth. But ultimately, it resolves and you stabilise on the self-esteem level. and you're completely disidentified with the need to belong level, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Yeah.